Ladies and gentlemen, my name's Paul, hopefully having an amazing day. As we move into the next generation of GPUs, Nvidia doesn't seem to be changing its tricks anytime soon, as there are reports that the RTX 5080 at least will have a couple of different memory configurations available to it, although perhaps only the 16GB variant will be available at launch, but later on there may also be a 24GB variant as well. So what the hell am I talking about? Well, around a week ago, there were specifications that leaked online courtesy of Coppertite 7 Kimi, and basically we are looking at 84 SMs or 10,752 CUDA cores. Of course, it's not confirmed these specifications are correct at this point, and Nvidia certainly can change the specs. They have already several times over, it seems, particularly the 5090, but those are the latest specs. The memory configuration, though, actually raised a few eyebrows. Now, Blackwell is going to be embracing the GDDR7 memory standard, and in this particular instance, the specifications of the card are a 256-bit bus with 16GB of memory, and the rumoured frequency of the memory is 28 Gbps, so we're looking at just a smidgen under 900 GB per second of bandwidth. The rumoured TGP, by the way, is 400 watts, which is kind of an owie, but again, this has not been confirmed, so it's possible it could be less or more, as of course Nvidia officially announced the GPUs. But there is a very interesting update to this, and I want to give credit to WCCF Tech where I initially spotted this. However, the report is over at Chip Hell, and Polymorph, who is a relatively well-known user, states that yes, the 5080 will have 16GB, but there will be another variant of a 5080 which will be 24GB, and it will release later. Now, unfortunately, right now I haven't been able to confirm this. I'm going to reach out to some sources. To be honest with you guys, I've been away in Wales, hence the reason there's been no videos on the last couple of days on the channel. Basically, I was attending a friend's wedding and also taking care of some other stuff. Basically, there was well, let's just say there was some fun stuff with a boiler in the flat, and leave it there, shall we? But everything's fine now. It just, you know, where everything kind of just goes wrong for a week, and you're like, oh, why? Why is this happening? But again, everything's cool now. But so I haven't actually spoken to many people about this yet, but unfortunately there is no confirmation whether the specifications for the rest of the specifications have changed. So what basically this seems to be is GDDR7 is available in two different capacities. You have the 2GB modules, which is pretty much the same thing as you have with GDDR6, but there is also non-binary modules as well. If you're not too familiar with this, you can basically think of it as like, you know how you have like 32GB sticks, or shall I say sets for DDR5, but you can also get like 48 or what have you as well. Basically the same principle. So GDDR7 allows, let's say, 3GB modules. So obviously, even if you're still running the same bus, you could have 24 gigabit. But should I say gigabyte, not gigabit. Anyway, the point is that we don't, however, know if there are changes to, like, for example, the number of SM. So, for example, will this be an RTX 5080 Ti or an RTX 5080 Super or what have you? Unfortunately, that has not been confirmed yet. It's possible that Nvidia will release this 6 months, 12 months after the initial launch period. After all, they have done this with the RTX, 40 cards. They've done this with the 30 cards. They've done this with the 20 cards. I'm sure everyone remembers the initial launch of the RTX 20 series, and then you had the Super cards which launched later, and this is just very typical Nvidia stuff. So who knows, it might also just be lack of particular RAM available for Nvidia as well. There are a lot of moving parts to this, of course. Now, it does seem like these GPUs will be announced early next year. And obviously this means that RTX 40 is going to start to be phased out. And so I spotted something on Twitter, and this is basically from Harakazi5719, and it is, of course, an image which essentially states that the production of certain cards are going to start to be phased out. So this is on Chinese board channels, which is probably going to shock you given the name, but it's actually a forum which is obviously in Chinese, and they typically have some pretty good information, but basically it states that the RTX 4090 and 4090D are going to be discontinued, and this is going to be happening in October. So there is still supply available, because obviously you have manufacturers who perhaps have GPUs in transit or stuff sitting in warehouses and so on and so on. And so it takes obviously a while for the inventory to start draining. But the RTX 4080 Super is also going to be discontinued next month. And again, GPU supply will start to drain away in November. So what this basically means is that the high-end cards are going to start to disappear, and so by the end of November, the RTX 4090s and the RTX 4080 Supers are going to just essentially disappear in terms of their new cards being sold. Now obviously some retailers are still going to have them, but I don't really need to tell you guys that it's pretty much in preparation for the RTX 50 series at this point. And it does seem that the RTX 5090 and 5080 are going to be the cards which launch first. There's also a potential for a 5090D, which of course has some specifications nerfed for the Chinese market. Nothing new there. It's going to be very interesting, to be honest with you guys, to see what Nvidia actually announces these cards to be. I've had a couple of different prices now from people. One person told me that over $2,000 is what they're expecting for the 5090, but another person told me that that's way too expensive. They're expecting it instead to be about $1,800. Frankly, at this point, I don't really want to, put my money on any specific price, if that made sense. I think at this stage, quite frankly, Nvidia can do whatever the hell they want. RDNA 4, to my understanding, was never intended to release this year. So there's a really long story behind that, and I've kind of tackled it in bits and pieces before. Maybe I'll go into it in a really in-depth video, but I don't really think there's much of a point at this stage. But basically, RDNA 4 was cancelled, the high-end cards I mean, just to be clear, the chiplet versions, for numerous reasons, not least of which because of shifting packaging and production of that specific silicon to things like the MI series of GPUs. The fact that AMD wanted to make certain that they had enough resources to really divert to RDNA 5, and there are a couple of other reasons as well, which are business decisions. But basically, RDNA 4, of course, is still going to have N44 and 48. But I've had now a couple of people who've told me that there was no intention ever of releasing RDNA 4 this year. Which, to be honest, I'm a little surprised, because there were lots of rumours, and I covered them, that RDNA 4 was intending to launch this year. But I've had two people now, and one person I really do trust. They very rarely steered me wrong. And they basically told me there was never an intention to release RDNA 4 this year. It was always going to be the first quarter of next year. And this is for numerous reasons. One, they just essentially didn't have any, they knew that Nvidia weren't going to launch early. They also felt that they wanted lots of time to sell out the RDNA free GPUs and other things as well. But that's allegedly what the rumors were. I have to say I was a little surprised about that, because not only were there tons of sources of mine that were telling me it was definitely going to be this year, albeit probably Q3 or more likely Q4, but there were also all of those Linux patches, but allegedly, no, never intended. But ultimately, those are cards which are going to be selling at volume, which is fine, as long as the cards are at a decent price with a good level of performance and appeal to mid-range gamers. I think that's absolutely excellent. The problem is, it just means that Nvidia essentially have the high-end market all to itself. So good luck, basically, with the RTX 5090 prices. Anyway, guys, I think that's just about it for this particular video. It's a little shorter than normal. Apologies for not being available the last couple of days. As I said, I got back from Wales and something else happened. Then the boiler essentially just completely died. Then there were some other things. So I'm only just starting to get back to relative normality. But there are some projects and stuff that hopefully will be the next couple of days. So really sorry about that. But, just sometimes life kicks you in the balls. With that said, take care of yourselves. Have an amazing day. Bye for now.